Welcome back to the Be a Man podcast, where we encourage men to be better men. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the podcast, men. I'm glad that you have joined us for this special episode. I had the opportunity to go on someone else's podcast and do a little interview. It was a lot of fun. I think you will enjoy the conversation, but I want to introduce you to who that is. His name is Steve. He runs the Hall of Fame Fatherhood podcast. It's a great resource for dads wanting just to become better dads. He has an interesting story. We get into it a little bit, and I was really encouraged by it, and I think you guys will be too. His goal in the website he runs, in the podcast he runs, is just, sharing his story, sharing his struggle, and hoping that like-minded fathers will strive every day to become a Hall of Fame father, both spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. So I will drop all the info, all the contacts, all the websites, all that kind of stuff into the description below when you go to watch this or listen to this. So be sure to go check that out. But without further ado, I hope you enjoy this conversation we had. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, do all those good things. But most of all, just go and share this episode with someone else, or reshare, repost, do whatever you want to do there. But that only helps us get the word out on both of my show, my podcast, what I'm trying to accomplish here, but also what Steve is trying to accomplish. And I think it's a really, really good mission he's on. So go and do that. We'd greatly appreciate it. And without further ado, let's get into it.
All right. Welcome to the Hall of Fame Fatherhood podcast. I'm your host, Steve Mistovich. Today, I'm joined by Justin Smith of Be a Man, BAM. Justin, thanks for joining me.
You got it.
Well, let's just jump into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing with Be a Man, and what got you into this.
Sure, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited about this. Have been for a while. I always like talking about fatherhood, all those different things. The funny thing is that we were told we wouldn't have any kids, and now we have 4. Oh, wow. So yeah, the oldest, she'll be a teenager next month. So okay. We're getting ready to go into that journey, and it's something. And yeah. We've got a 9-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2.5-year-old. So it kind of keeps us on our toes for sure. It's hard to go back and forth between, that almost 13-year-old to the 2-year-old and remember that, oh yeah, I can't talk to you the same way that I can talk to her, or vice versa. Right. There's still a lot of instruction with that little one still that has to happen. But, it,
all right, a little technical difficulty there. Right. So you were saying, what, almost 13 to 2.5?
So, yeah. I started the podcast because there were some different things happening with my dad, my grandpa, just some heart-related things, health scares, and it just got me thinking, what are some things I'd want my son to remember, or sons now. The time it was only one, and so I started, posting some things I really wanted them to remember, or if something happened to me, what were some things that I really want to drive home in them, that they could look back and see, kind of like an online journal, if you will, just a visual journal that they could see and experience. And that's a huge driver for what I do. I want to push men, to encourage them to be better men. And part of that is obviously becoming better fathers. And I want to push them to be the men that they need to be for their sons, for their families, for their daughters, whoever it may be, their spouses. They
Mm-hmm.
need to be the man that they are called to be. And it's been amazing. I think I told my wife that first week, I said, I'm going to try this. If it doesn't go anywhere, if I get bored with it, I'm just going to give it up in a week or a month or so.
Yeah.
But then I started meeting a bunch of guys and a bunch of people on here, and just started building some network relationships that just kind of pushed me, that I never thought would happen. I mean, I just never did. And it's been awesome. I mean, I can talk to a guy from, California to Ohio to Florida to,
Yeah.
just about anywhere. It's just really cool when you think about it. It's something that, 20 years ago, this isn't happening. And
Right.
even 10 years ago, for that matter, probably. And now,
Right.
we're talking just about things that can encourage each other to push us towards being better fathers, better men, better people in this society that is upside down in many ways. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm probably leaving out a lot, but what about you? What's your story? Who are you?
So, my story is much the same. I have experience with the big age gap. So I got uh, two boys. Well, one's a man. He's 22, and then my wife and I have a 6-year-old.
Okay,
And
cool.
so big age gap. I was actually 18, uh, just about to graduate high school when my oldest was born.
Yeah,
And so did the co-parenting, single parent thing
yeah,
all of his life. Um, so I met my wife when he was about 9, and we've been together ever since. And so navigating that, and really, like, been thinking about doing something for probably like the past 5 years. And I was like, what am I gonna do? Like, what am I good at? Like, what's my biggest experience? And
mm-hmm.
being a father, I got 2 months of adult experience childless.
Yeah,
Like, I was 18-year-old. 2 months after I turned 18, my son was born. So uh, it's something that's impacted my life tremendously. Even dating back to, uh, my father lost his father when he was 11, and you know that experience, formed him, and obviously by extension formed me. And just like, all right, let's talk to guys and see what I know what I've struggled with, and see what they're struggling with, and see if we can help each other, be better. Uh, and that's, like you said, it's part accountability, part, you know, for me, it's putting myself out there, uh, getting over that fear.
yeah,
And so, yeah, that's what it's been for me. And
yeah.
meeting guys like yourself, and having conversations with guys that, like, I have a conversation lined up for Friday with a guy from in Australia. Like,
Man, that's awesome.
it's wouldn't happen 10, 15 years ago, like you said. So,
Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah,
mhm.
yeah. I think something else that kind of drove me was, we've witnessed a lot of messed up things these last few years, and it's hit me several times. It's like, where are the fathers? And there's so many broken families and all that, all those things that go
Mhm.
into that. But it's like, where are the dads? I mean, where are these guys that need to just, I mean, if a son had his father there, he would know, like, what
Mhm.
what is right, what is wrong, what is, if I mess up, there's going to be some consequences here. And, you know,
Yeah.
I all the power to moms and all those things, but there's something different when a dad,
Yeah.
my wife can look at my son in particular, the 2-year-old, and he'll respond, but it's just a little different than when dad says, "Hey, cut it out,"
Right.
because it's just something there that they need. And
Hmm.
I think, man, the more we can learn from one another, like you're saying, the better. Because we need that. We need to
Hmm.
push, because we all have blind spots. We all have issues that in areas we're not good at. I mean, we could all probably work on patience a little bit more, but
Yeah.
I think that's a common trait with most guys. But
Yeah. Yeah. I
hey,
just seen
let's be
a
honest.
post. Uh, I forget who shared it, but essentially it was like, how can we hurry up our kids and expect them to essentially
Mm,
immediately respond to our demands,
yeah,
but then we sit there and when they call us to, hey, help me with this drawing, we're like, oh, wait a minute, daddy's doing posting something on Instagram or daddy's doing whatever. Like,
yeah,
why, that there's a disconnect there that shouldn't be there. We're out of alignment somewhere. And I'm
sure.
guilty of that. And it's
Oh
like,
yeah,
you know, those are very small things that seem inconsequential, but they have a big impact, you know, over the
sure.
course of the child's life. I mean, that's what they're going to remember.
Oh yeah, yeah. They don't. It seems like even it's not always the big things that happen when we were kids that we remember. I think a lot of times it's just those little moments that we remember that were unique to us, special to us,
Hmm.
but our parents probably have no idea that they happen or that we
Right.
remember them. I think one
Hmm.
of my earliest memories I can remember is man, I was probably 2, I'm guessing. And just my dad was on the floor playing with this fire truck and some other truck I had on the floor with me. And
Okay.
that's just, and he probably has no idea or remembers any of it. But
Yeah.
that's, it was just that unique moment that I remember,
Hmm.
just from an early childhood experience that was just very important to me, or
Hmm.
very special. And I think, man, that's great. Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, for you, what drives you in this, Hall of Fame fatherhood? What is driving you in this? What is pushing you? What's your goals
Uh,
ultimately? I mean,
I mean, ultimately, like you said, a lot of things are upside down, and like for me, I come from a very traditional family. My parents are still together, and all my aunts and uncles are on their original marriages,
mm,
you know, on both sides of my family. And for that matter, so is my wife's. And um, so very traditional. I mean, that's the bedrock, that's the foundation I've been built on. And so, when I first became a father, that kind of got blown up and I didn't know how to respond.
mm,
So essentially, what I did is we split up. We did the, every other weekend, every Wednesday deal. And, you know, always worked out, you know, everything between us, never went through a court or anything like that. So feel very fortunate in that
yeah,
situation. And we had a lot of support. Um, but that wasn't an ideal situation.
sure,
And getting to experience both sides, you know, having the family that I have now, like that's the driving force. Like I want to be the best father that I can be for them, the best husband I can be for my wife, and just the best man in general. Like,
yeah,
so I guess that's a long-winded answer to essentially say, like, I recognize my weaknesses as a man and trying to essentially battle those to overcome those.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Um, what are some of those things, if you want to get into it, what are some of those things you're prioritizing in your life? Just because there's things we can prioritize with our kids to do better with them, but I think for a guy to really be have that healthy relationship with their kids, they need to be prioritizing some things in their own personal growth too. What are some of those personal growth areas that you'd be willing to get into?
I mean, so for me right now, like I think I've seen you post on Sundays, like take your family to
Sure.
church.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I'm seeking out right now is a spiritual home.
Sure.
Um, because in some ways I feel like that's like foundational before everything else. Like you
Sure.
can't talk about growth if you're not somehow connected spiritually to, whatever
Yeah.
your belief system is. And so that's what I'm in search of right now.
Gotcha.
So that physical health, um, been on track with that for the past, what's this, October, past 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
Trying to get myself back to fighting weight, so to speak, and
What have you been doing?
just
Lifting, running. What have you been doing?
like hit workouts,
Okay. Yeah. Awesome.
and
Yeah.
so yeah, those are my two areas that I'm focusing on right now.
Sure.
And doing the podcast is part of it too. Like this is a hobby for me, and I'm not making a living off this or anything, uh, but it's making connections and networks and stuff like that. So it's just
Yeah.
fun to experiment with.
Yeah. I hear you. I kind of got into lifting. I was even before, the whole COVID mess, and I don't want to get into all that, but everybody has their different opinions. But if I'm asked, I'm blunt about it. But if I'm not asked, then I don't get into it very much. But even before all that happened, I found myself mentally just having a hard time letting things go or processing through things. And so I got back to lifting again. It had been a
Okay.
long time, all kids, school, all that stuff. I mean, I just had gotten away from it, and I got back into that. And I think that's been key for me because for whatever reason, it helps me clear my mind, and I'm able to think more clearly, work more productively, and there's other health benefits too, just
Right.
having more energy for the kids and my
Mhm.
wife and all those different things that go along with that. So that's been huge. I got big into watching strongman stuff.
Okay.
Just it's just fun to watch because a lot of what they do is just really practical. I mean,
Mhm.
you're always going to be lifting something. You're always going to be carrying something. And
Right.
so I started watching them. I've started, squat, deadlift, bench. Those are the three main areas. And um, now my boys and my oldest daughter, she does some of those things with me. I
Awesome.
really dove in because we were always taught, kids shouldn't do any of that stuff. But there's been a lot of research
Yeah, and that you see
changing.
it more and more.
Yeah, there's whole schools, school districts in Texas that it's a regular. They're doing that instead of PE time,
Really.
teaching kids how to squat, and they've noticed huge health benefits. Plus, in sports, they've seen a decrease in injuries. So there's a lot of things. So they're down here. They don't do a lot, but they're doing it with me, and we try to make a big
Mhm.
just kind of a thing with it. My little 5-year-old, she'll come down and do her little stretches and whatever.
Yeah.
She just, we just, that's part of fatherhood. It's just, kind of involving them in the process. Uh,
Right. Well,
I'm going to do it. Go ahead.
do you like purposely like try to integrate them into it, or do you like try to prioritize it? Do you get up in the morning so you get it in, or do you kind of just like work around,
Yeah.
in the afternoon when the kids are home, you
Yeah.
get it in then?
So we homeschool, so it's a little different. Um,
Okay.
we, m- my schedule and stuff, it just works out better for us to do that. And it's been a cool experience. I never thought in a million years we'd homeschool. But it just, we moved a few times and it was the middle of the school year and we just didn't want to put our kids through that. And
Okay.
I've ended up liking it a lot because, I mean, you don't realize how much time you miss from them when they're in
Wow, that's
school and
cool.
all the extra activities and all that stuff. But for us, I just do it first thing in the morning. I mean, I come down
Okay.
earlier, so I wake up earlier. I'm the first one up, all those types of things. I get my cardio in, but then the weightlifting is about when they start strolling down the stairs. And
Okay.
I, part of it is because there's no gym at school. I mean, because they're not there. So part
Hmm.
of it is just to get their heart rate going, get them more active, get them, moving and
Yeah.
just kind of just get their brains awake. And so they come down and do it first thing in the morning with me. And at first it was just, real simple. Let's just stretch together, that kind of thing. Here's how you do a push up. Here's how you do a sit up. And then they saw me doing the squat. So then they wanted to try doing that too. Especially my son, because whatever dad's doing, he wants to do too.
Yeah.
And then even the 2-year-old, he'll come down sometimes, and I've got them this little, like plastic weight set thing, and
Yeah.
he'll throw it up and throw it up in the air, be like, "Rah!" And you start yelling, it's funny. And I just try to integrate all of them, and it's not always fun. They don't always want to do it, and sometimes I tell them, there's a lot of life lessons here. We're going to have to always do something we don't want to do.
Hmm.
And sometimes you have to just push through it. You're not always going to feel motivated. You're not always going to have that
Hmm.
desire, but the discipline to keep doing something that will help you. And it may be hard, but it's not necessarily at the top of your priority list at the moment.
Hmm.
And be able to do, I say a lot, do hard things. And that's what I really try to push them, because as somewhere along the line, and I work with a lot of teenagers and youth. I hear all the time, graduations. I just want to go do whatever will make me happy. And that sounds great. But you
Yeah.
and I both know from experience and just life in general, history, whatever, that's not realistic. I mean,
No.
you're going to have to do things that you don't like to do.
Hmm.
So part of me gets annoyed by it that there's these, school counselors that keep just telling kids to do that, because
Hmm.
that's not real life. They're going to have to do things. They're going to have to work
Right.
hard. If they're going to be successful, if they're going to make a difference in society, they're going to have to do some hard things and do things
Hmm.
that they don't really want to do.
Hmm.
And so I'm trying to instill that in them now. I don't think they always like it, but I think it's
Yeah.
starting to click a little bit, because
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of those types of things that we just, little lessons that I try to incorporate into that time that we can spend together. I'll crank up the Disney show, whatever tunes for
Yeah.
especially the 5-year-old, because she loves hearing them. But, the whole time she's doing her stretches, she's doing all those things. So I just try to integrate all those things together just to try and enjoy it with them, and just to
No,
make
that's
most of
awesome.
the opportunities. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
and you're setting the example and teaching the lessons,
Yeah.
that come up. And
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
there's a better way to go about it.
Yeah. And I mean, you broached the subject of the spiritual side too. I mean, that's key to all I'm doing. I mean, really, I think you have to have a foundation.
Hmm.
Um, In the New Testament, Paul talks about having bodily training is of some value, but spiritual is of utmost importance, basically. I'm
Mm.
paraphrasing, but I do think that a relationship with God and that faith plays an integral part in what we're doing, and it can drive us, because if we don't have something solid, something steady, then man, we're going to be, it's like the waves. We're going to be tossed here and there and everywhere.
Yeah.
And if we have something solid and foundational, and let's be honest, just from history in general, the more societies get away from a respect or at least a knowledge of God, the worse societies typically get. It's been the course throughout all of history. And I think the more we strive to change that and integrate that into our kids and teach them those things, I think it can only benefit for the future. I do. So
Yeah.
I say that because I'm glad to hear that you're on that journey and trying to find that too. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, it's I mean, I was born and raised Catholic, and
Okay.
did the typical, like, this is stupid, I don't need it,
Yeah.
superstitious stuff, But then, I'm a seeker and a dreamer and all those things, and so I went looking, and all the other, religious, non-religious, like all the other sects, and thought I found answers, and pretty much just fell into, like, well, everything's relative, and it's like, then COVID hit, and that really showed me a new side, and to be honest, kind of some events and stuff, turned me back towards the faith, and
That's awesome.
not saying I'm attending church every Sunday or anything, but I'm
Sure.
I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm searching for the right church and the right home.
Yeah, you're on that journey.
Yeah.
You know what? I've had this same conversation with a lot of people and a lot of guys. I mean, something clicked that there has to be something more than what just this society, this just kind of, mundane life that it seems like it is sometimes. And we can go really apathetic if we go down that path too far.
Yeah.
And I think it woke some people up, and they realized maybe there is more out there than what I really thought. And that's awesome. I enjoy hearing that. I mean, and I can tell you there's a lot of guys on that same journey right now. So you are not alone. Definitely, man.
Yeah.
You are not alone. That's awesome. Actually, video I put out with Matthew Huddle, Hero's Breath.
Okay.
I think it was last week it came out. Same story. I mean, almost to the dot. Same story. And he, in the last year, had kind of come back to the faith, and just awesome. Awesome to hear that, man.
Yeah, it was kind of a humbling experience, because it was, just because I was, went to Catholic school, and, went to church most Sundays and stuff, like, you get this arrogance that you think you understand the faith.
Yeah.
And then with some age and some wisdom and a lot of mistakes,
it
was like, oh, wait, there's a whole lot of depth there that I'm missing out on.
Definitely.
And it's like, okay, that's part of my my goal, is to live a life that's deep and meaningful.
Yep.
And so I, essentially have to turn around and go deeper into, So that's
a lot of us know things up here in our minds, but we don't always have it down here in our hearts. And the Bible talks about that inner man, and that's where the change really has to happen, because we can have it all up there. And my wife, she had it, she'd tell you, she had it all up there, and then I mean, she was 20 something, and that switch flipped, and it became more personal. And it's a cool story, but I'm excited to hear that you're going on that journey, and your kids can only benefit from seeing their dad embrace something powerful and strong, and something that is bigger than himself. I think that's awesome. That's so cool. Yeah,
appreciate it.
Yeah.
So
don't give up. Don't give up.
No, I mean,
I always say.
Yeah, I mean, this is I feel like it's the second half of my life. Like, that's the journey.
Yeah.
Like, I've done all the dumb stuff and the shallow stuff that, I've achieved, most of my goals, and outside of, making it to the NBA, but, I've done well for myself, but I'm still searching. Like, there's still pieces missing. So it's like, okay,
yeah,
it must be over here. So
yeah, that's awesome. It's awesome.
So what we talked about, you obviously exemplify, developing yourself, strength. What's one of the, I guess let's switch gears a little bit. Like,
sure.
What's the biggest lesson that you've learned from your father?
Man, there's a lot. Like any young person who thinks they know it all, it took a long time to realize that there was a lot more I was learning from him than I thought. And one of the biggest things was, I think, I would say here in the last couple years, that relationship has grown more as I realized, and kids are getting older, and I'm realizing, man, I didn't make it always easy for him either. And I wasn't too rebellious, but there's always things, attitude, all those things that go along with that. But I think one of the things is always, there's a lot of influence and a lot of people that are going to come into your life. But the one thing that you always do is provide and protect your family. You take care of your own first and foremost. And he has exemplified that his whole life. I mean, there was never a time we were without or needed. I mean, there's always something we wanted that we didn't have, but there was nothing we ever needed and didn't have. And then even more than that, we had far more than what we ever really needed. And I think that has become even more clear these last several years, just that's important. I mean, friendships are important. What we're doing here is important, I think. Developing and helping each other and building one another up and encouraging one another. But and we all have friends that we hang out with and do all those things, but your family is priority number one. Taking care of them, providing for them, doing those things that they need is numero uno, no matter what. And he really has ingrained that into me, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful for it, and I probably don't say it enough, but I truly, I am.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome to hear. You more often hear the sad stories rather than uplifting stories like that, and the example that your father set. And that, my dad is much the same. And I guess that's another thing that's like pushing me in this, is like a lot of men don't have that example. So it's like, well, I was given this, and yes, I'm going to give it to my sons, but like, I can also give it to other men who maybe didn't have that example. So it's like, I want to gift that to the world. Like, I feel like as long as my family's taken care of and I can extend that out, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And, hopefully podcasting leads to, real in-person, connection and
Sure.
support. But does that land for you? Is that something that
Yeah.
is behind what you're doing?
Yeah, I think so. I think, just trying to push it on, there are things I'm learning personally. And I know hearing just this conversation, there's a lot of things you're learning too as you're going, and, just pushing those things on to other guys who, I mean, there's just a lot of guys who are just trying to figure it out. And there's a lot of other, one thing I've learned from this, and I haven't been doing it super long, but I've already learned this, is that there's a lot of guys out there more like us than what we'd like to think there is, who, the ones we always see are the ones who are doing their own thing. Their families are like an afterthought. And that's what we see on TV and stuff too.
Right.
And it's like, actually, there's a lot of guys out there who just want to be the best dad, the best husband for their family. And I'm finding that there is a lot of guys like that who are just trying to figure it out. And I think that's what we're doing. And if a guy can come on and share something that just kind of pushes that, either in me personally or you, and we can share that with someone else. A guy from Australia says something that is awesome and, just kind of pushes you in an area. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, we need that. He needs that. He needs that encouragement. I wrote a guy today. I was talking to somebody the other night about, just the value of fitness in your daily life and the values of that. And I know we got into that a little bit, but I wrote him today and said, man, you have no idea how much that pushed me this last week. It just, I was just kind of coasting a little. It had been kind of a busy time we've had, and I was just kind of coasting with it. But I told him, man, I cranked it this last 2 weeks since that conversation. I just really cranked it up a notch, and it felt good. I mean, I needed that push, and that's often, that's just what we're doing. We're pushing each other.
Right.
We need that. I think guys in particular really need that. We need, and I think it was always there in past centuries, past decades. Guys were pushed often just so they could live, their families could live. But now I think we need that push, and it just looks a little different, but we still need those goals, those attainable things we can reach out. We need that challenge, I guess. We need to be challenged more often, and we need to be doing something. And it's always good when we can do this and just trying to challenge and push each other towards those goals.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest, I guess, on a scale of 1 to 10, like, how would you rate, fathers or, fatherhood in general? Like, how does it look to you right now?
In my own life, man, you'd always like to say you're up at a 10, but that's not true. It's always something, man. If you can break a 5, I think you're doing pretty good. But society, it's like -10, but I think it's a mess right now. But I mean, personally, I don't know where I'd rank myself. That's a question for my kids probably, and you'd probably get all kinds of answers. But I
was looking more like specific, like societal. I guess I could have framed that question better, but
you're good.
It's, we've touched on it, like you said. Things are lacking. So with that outlook, like, how do you stay positive and stay focused on being the best example that you can?
Yeah.
In hopes that, you're setting a better example to make some change.
You know, I think one of the biggest things that has ever stuck out to me is when our oldest was like 1 or 2, and someone told us that they were just watching, and they told us how much they appreciated how we were parenting her and all those types of things. And we had no idea. We were stressed out. We thought we were blowing it. And
Yeah.
I, people will randomly say things like that to us. And I don't always know how to take it. It's always humbling, but I'm like, man, if you only knew what a day to day was like, how much I'm blowing it. Just
Yeah.
patience is a huge one for me. I think I've been doing better lately, but it's always an issue. I mean, part of it is every kid's different, and they all four are very different, and there's a lot of challenges there I could go into, but I think realizing that someone's always watching, I think is a huge motivator for me and kind of pushes me, because if we're not going to set the example, who will? I mean, because if all they're going to pick up from is what society, what culture, what social media is teaching them, we're doomed. I mean, this civilization's gonna fall, and it may anyways, and whatever. But if you and I and other guys can be kind of like those pillars that just kind of stand, and pillars aren't perfect, they're scratched up, they're dented, all those things, but when the battle comes, when it seems like everything's raging around them, they stand firm. And for you and I, it's standing firm and not being easily shaken, but just trying to just keep pushing on, just keep learning, keep growing, keep doing what we know is the right thing to do, despite the criticism and someone's always going to whine at you about something you're doing. I run our town's little league baseball program, and there's a certain time of year where it's multiple times a day I've got somebody whining about this, whining about that, and it just goes with it. And sometimes they don't even realize they're whining. They're just blowing off steam, and it's in one ear and out the other. But and then on the flip side, I'll coach all our kids teams. And there's huge opportunities. I've got kids who are now, I started when they were 7, and now they're turning 13 with my oldest, and they're still coming up to me calling me Coach Justin, because that's what they know me as. They remember me as that, and they're still coming up because I'm very competitive. Don't get me wrong, I'm very competitive, but they're 5, 6, 12-year-olds. I don't understand some parents when it comes to that stuff, but and I try to set the example, because running it, you gotta kind of have a standard a little bit. So you're blowing it, everyone else is gonna blow it too. But it's just being steady. I think that's a lot of it. It's just being that steady presence that people realize, you know what, there's something different about that guy. There's something different. He's doing something that's just a little bit different. Why does our house is chaotic a lot too. I mean, 4 kids, it gets chaotic. But we also, again, going back to our faith, there's something steady that what we do has a purpose. We don't just do anything out of ignorance, or well, I guess there's sometimes we do, but we don't do anything just because that's how other people are doing it. There's always something steady and a purpose behind what we're doing, and we allow the scriptures to kind of dictate those things. And that's a lot of what me and my wife do, is we try to push people to go that same path. And because we need, in a world that is postmodern, relative, your truth is yours, and that truth, all those things. And at some point that doesn't fly. Somebody's got to be right. And the one thing that stood the test of time is the Bible. I mean, The scriptures have stood the test. And so that's what we're using. And that's what we think drives us to try to, man, be better examples, be lights in a dark, dark world. That's our goals. That's what kind of drives me anyways.
No, and that's
there's a lot there. I know.
Yeah, there's a lot there. But that's the, you know, sometimes I can get caught in, in the rabbit holes and in the negativity and in the dark world.
Yeah.
And I try not to stay down there too long. But it's like there's a part of me, like there's men that I am acquainted with it, like, they'll complain that their softball game runs into their golf outing, or, and things like that. And I have very little sympathy for bitches and gripes like that. It's just like, wait, the world is burning essentially, and this is what I have to listen to. Like,
yeah.
And I know that's coming off as judgmental, but it's like I almost don't care. Like,
yeah,
it's I guess I'll step off my soapbox, but
no, you're right, man. It's like, when did fathers stop being fathers? Like, when did they just realize, yeah, that's my kid, but I don't really need to do anything with them? Like, for me, I used to golf all the time, but 12, almost 13 years ago was the last time I golfed. I mean, until my kids were old enough and they wanted to show an interest, and maybe part of it was we were told we weren't going to have any, but I mean, I always wanted a huge family.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted 8 kids, but my wife probably would have.
Yeah, I wanted 6 when I was young, but that.
Yeah, and maybe if we were able to have them closer together, it may have been a little different. But 25 to 35 was a huge difference.
Yeah,
I could not stay. I don't know how my wife did it, how she stayed up all night. It was just, I could not do it anymore. It was just, it was rough. And I was like, yeah, this is the last one. But it's like, man, if that's all I really wanted, and especially when I hit my 20s, I knew I wanted to be married. I knew I wanted a lot of kids, and that's what I wanted. Those were my goals at that time. And so when I got that, I mean, that's what I wanted. And part of that probably goes back to my dad as well, and integrating, just doing some of those things to teach me those things. But like, I just don't understand that mindset of, like, these are your kids. These are your responsibilities. Like, don't complain about this generation or that generation or all this when you are not willing to, suck it up and do what you need to do to raise a better generation.
Right. The kids are the result, and you're the one who produced them. Like, yeah. So how can you then complain about the product when you made it?
Exactly right.
And it's like, yeah, I don't have much sympathy for that either. And it's like, I messed up my kids just as much as the next parent,
Yeah.
But it's like, that was part of why I have a 16-year gap. It's like, I had a change of heart, and I was like, you know what? At least, the things that, at least in my view, I did wrong with the first go around, at least my oldest will see, like, okay, not even if you do screw up, you keep trying and you get better. And that's, what I'm showing them with my youngest. There's a different way to parent.
Yeah.
And, because I wasn't the most patient, I was a teenager, I was a kid. I had no idea. And
yeah, I can imagine, man. No one has a clue what they're doing when they start out.
No, it's, yeah, I mean, luckily I had the support, but yeah, I mean, I think back sometimes and cringe at like, that's how you used to react. Like, that's what you used to do. That's how you used to parent. And it's
Yeah.
like, just like anything else, you got to work at it. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
So,
I hear you. But let me ask you a question. How do you make the most? We've got holidays coming up here, and Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas. How do you make the most of the holidays for you guys? Because I mean, some guys they're not all into holidays, and that's fine. But our kids always are.
right.
So how do you make the most of those times?
Well, I would say presence is, the biggest.
Yeah.
Um, and like thinking about it for me, like my little one loves Halloween, and I grew up hating Halloween. Like I never dressed up like it. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And then here he comes, and this is it. This his favorite holiday, and you know, like I've embraced it. Like my parents, we actually just did it this past weekend. Do the whole pumpkin carving, go pick a
Mm-hmm.
pumpkin, carving, painting, fire, s'mores, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's become like a little family tradition over the past, I don't know, 5 years or so. And it's like, I never would have thought, 10, 15 years ago that we'd have a family tradition around Halloween. But it's like,
Yeah.
it brings everybody together. And, you know, we don't dress up or anything except for on Halloween. But it's like, just embrace it. If your kid is into it, just embrace that moment and enjoy it for what it is because it'll pass. Eventually,
Yeah.
I'm sure our little one's gonna be a teenager and be like, all right, that's stupid. I'm not dressing up.
Yeah.
And maybe not. But and then I would also say, much like my spiritual journey, like maybe revisit the stories
Mm.
and see if they because I think they need revivified.
Yeah.
Uh, it's become dumbed
Yeah.
down and maybe there's some new spins or something that people can put on them. And I don't even know if that's necessary, but you know,
I hear you.
see what the truths, that they were trying to reveal, the kind of the pattern that they're trying to reveal.
Yeah.
And so I'll say that too.
Yeah. Those are good. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. I think being present is huge. I mean, it just because we may think they're dumb and all that kind of stuff. My kids, they want to dress up like this dumb Disney show. I can't. What's it called? Cricket Green or something. It's
Okay.
the Greens. It's some dumb little show they love watching, and there's a dad on there, so they want me to dress up like. But I'm like, you know what? They will remember it for years if I do that,
Right.
and because I have basically one costume and it's Darth Vader, and that's what I usually wear every single year. But and that's what they know, and mainly because I don't like dressing up. I'd rather be the person who passes out the candy than going around to all the
Yeah.
houses. But I think that may change this year. So, um, I like that revisiting the stories. That's good too. I think I found myself the last few years just going through the motions a little bit. Just we know this, what we're doing. It's a
Hmm.
lot of travel, all this stuff. And I think that's a good I need to remember that is that there's more here than what I think we take for granted sometimes. We know the stories, but that doesn't mean our kids do. And
Hmm.
we need to make sure we're telling them those things. And I like that. That's a good I needed to hear that. So thank you. You're the
Yeah.
man.
Awesome. Yeah. And yeah, that's the magic. of, this sort of thing. Just, you know, you never know what's going to land. And it's just awesome that some small little tidbit that you can hear say, has a positive effect. That's awesome.
Definitely.
What, I know we're, coming up on time.
Sure.
But so I guess I got two questions, and like, be a man, like, how do you define that?
I define it as I look at 5 different areas that I think any man has to take seriously and grow in. And character, competence, courage. Or courage is a big one. I think communication, and there's some others, that you learn as you go. But I think character is the start of what being a man is all about. If you don't have that, you don't have anything. Because you can lose, and integrity is part of that, but you can lose that in a second. But the more we focus on our character, being men of integrity, it will only benefit not only us, but our marriages, our families, and society in general, I believe. I think a lot of the problems we see today are because we have a lot of people who don't have any character. Time and time again, we see guys who will not take responsibility for when they mess up. And how many times have we, messed up and we never want to take responsibility, right? But owning it and then moving on. And that was always a huge struggle for me. It's just, I hated messing up. And so it was always a challenge for me to own up to it. And the quicker, I tell young people this all the time, the sooner you own your mistakes, the sooner you will be progressing to becoming a better adult. Because that character you develop there will only benefit in every single way, because your kids will see it, others will see it, and it'll be weird to them because most people like to blame shift. If we're honest, we do. The quicker we get away from that, the better. And then just, being courageous, having courage to do something that is hard. I always go back to Washington crossing the Delaware. I mean, most people, if they know the history, it was icy. They couldn't see hardly anything. They're lucky they didn't just die in that river crossing. And the courage that they had to show, that he showed to take on that battle, is huge. And every day there's something you and I can show courage in. And maybe it's our work. We're being the best worker we can be. Maybe it's doing something that's hard. The last Sunday, we were standing around in a house near us. There was a gas leak and the house exploded. I mean, we were inside. It felt like a bomb went off. And it shook everything. We've got some windows that shattered, all that kind of stuff. And, the lady, I think, is okay. I can't believe she lived, but
she was in the house at the time.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And there's no house left. I mean, there's nothing, and there's stuff everywhere. And one of the cool things I saw, though, was there was a lot of people, and maybe it's a benefit of being in a small rural town, but there was a lot of people that went running towards that house to help. And, in a matter of minutes, there was 50, 75 people there checking to make sure, she was okay, to get her out, to get her dog out, to see if there's anybody else in the house. And just, it's little things like that. Maybe it's not something big like, an explosion, house exploding, but maybe it's just, you see a neighbor who needs a helping hand. Maybe it's, we've got fall coming, there's leaves falling. Maybe it's just having the courage to go across the street and saying, hey, you need your your leaves raked, or there's always something
Right.
you can
It could
show
be
courage in.
right. It could be a phone call to your mother or father just to
Yeah.
say I love you.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't have to be something, like some life altering decision all the time, but,
Right.
often it's just little things that it's easy just to say somebody else will take care of that, or I'll just do it another day. It's hard to say I'm going to do it right now, and if no one else does, I'm going to be the one who stands up here and does it. You know what I mean? It just, I think those are the aspects of, and there's other like competence issues that you learn to develop, and communication skills and all those things that are part of being a man. But character and courage are the two that I really place a high value on when it comes to encouraging other men to become better men. Yeah.
Awesome. And typically, the last question that I ask, and I know it's much the same. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of overlap, but how would you define a Hall of Fame father?
I think a Hall of Fame father is someone who loves unconditionally, who, when their kids look back, they know that their dad was someone who loved them, who provided for them, who cared about them, that no matter what they came to him with, he was going to have their back. I think that's what a Hall of Fame dad really is. And, there's a lot more that goes into those particular words there. But at the end of the day, our kids, and it's a development. When our kids are younger, they need mom more. I mean, just out of necessity.
Right.
But as they get older, and we're starting to see more of it, and working with teens for years, we know this already, but it's a little different now that it's personal. But my influence is growing more and more, and mom's influence is growing a little less and less, just because they need more of that father kind of pushing them, trying to drive them. But at the same time, even though I may be hard on them at times, which every kid needs, we don't want lazy kids. We want to teach them how to work, how to do these things. But at the same time, they need to know that dad has their back. Like, no matter what happens, dad is going to be there. If they fall down, yes, he's going to tell them to get up and suck it up, but he's also going to be there to say, hey, are you okay? I care. You're sick, I'm going to be there for you. You need something, I'm going to be there no matter what happens. Because dad loves you, he cares for you, he wants what's best for you. And I think all those things, and it's all motivated by loving, because I love them. And I think that's really, at the end of the day, what I would define a Hall of Fame dad as, is someone who loved their kids, who had their back, who wants to protect and provide for them, no matter what. Yeah, that's
perfect. Again, thanks for joining me tonight, and
I've enjoyed this, man. It's been fun.
It's been a lot of fun.
You've motivated my holiday attitude to start kicking into gear. So
wonderful.
Yeah, I needed that. Last year we had COVID over Christmas. So it was a long Christmas, because we normally go and do stuff and all those things. We couldn't go anywhere because with 6 of us, my wife got it first, and then I got it a few days later, and then all the kids got it. So it drew out like 3 weeks, because we were now the kids, they were over it in like a day, because they were over it. But the worst part, I shared with somebody the other day, my wife got me a smoker right for my birthday last year, before Christmas. And so she got this turkey for us, and we're getting all this together. And I'd gone like 5 days, hadn't lost any taste, any smell or anything. I'm like, man, I'm kicking this. This is awesome.
Yeah.
The day I smoked the turkey, the day I lose my taste and smell.
Man.
It tastes anything. It was awful, man. Well, we're going to try again this year.
Awesome. Yeah. At least you'll be able to taste it this year.
Yeah, man. I hope so. Because it was like the juices were running out. I'm like, this has to taste. And the kids were all, man, Dad, this is so good. And all, I'm like, thanks a lot.
Yeah. Rubbing it in.
Yeah. It's memorable. We won't ever forget it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, this has been great. And I think there's no better way to end it than with a laugh. And hopefully we can do a round 2 sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to, Steve. I really appreciate this. And I like what you're doing. I like what the message you're putting out there. And I just hope dads are encouraged and have a desire to be a better father. And I think we need more of it. And I appreciate you.
Yeah. Same here. And we'll talk soon.